Hey developers, today we are going to look at Prismic.io. It's a content management system. It's like a headless content management system for developers, for non-developers. Essentially makes your website editable for the whole team as the tagline on the website suggests. So what you can do with Prismic is you can have your non-developer people create pages, posts, and then your front end can then hook into it to grab it and display on the page. And it does a whole bunch of other things, has a lot of different querying capabilities. As you can see from the front page, it supports GraphQL. We're not going to look at the GraphQL today. Essentially in this video, we're going to take a look at configuring Prismic with Vue.js. They actually have their own Vue.js libraries, a couple of them that will work with Prismic that we can put inside our Vue.js app. And then we can grab information using it. So we're going to walk through that, and then at the end I'm going to show you kind of the power of Prismic. You can create this whole blog. This is all created through Prismic, has a Vue.js front end. It's grabbing it from the back end, and you can see here you can click through it. It loads everything. Pretty neat. We're not going to actually create this whole thing, but I'll show you where the code is, and I'll talk a little bit about how they set up, and that'll be near the end of the video. So make sure you stay and take a look at that. Hey, and if you don't know, my name is Erik. I'm a full-stack software developer. I'm also the author of a few books, and I'm a big fan of Vue.js, React, Angular, and if that is something that interests you, make sure you click that subscribe button, smash that like button, or smash the down like button if you don't like it. You know, whatever you want. Okay, so, all right, we're going to start here. What I would do is first sign up for Prismic. They have pretty cheap plans, and they also have a free plan. So we're on the free plan. By the way, this is not sponsored or anything. I thought I would just go ahead and take a look at Prismic today. And if you look at the docs and concepts, you can see they have libraries for all your favorite, front end and back end libraries. Laravel, there's Node.js library. And Vue.js is what we're going to look at today. So there is a starter project, and there's actually a Prismic CLI. We're not going to look at that. Actually, the Prismic CLI doesn't work with Vue, so they suggest you can actually use the starter, but instead of doing that, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create a brand new Vue project, and then we're going to install the libraries manually so you can understand how it works. And this is sort of this we're going to follow sort of this guide here, and I'll make sure the link's in the description. So I have my Visual Studio Code open here, so we're going to start off with Vue create Prismic YouTube. And this will go ahead and prompt me for a few questions. I'm on my Mac today. Well, I'm not going to use TypeScript, but I don't know. We'll have a router, I suppose. And we'll just hit enter through here. And it'll go ahead and install, and this will just take a moment. All right, so it's done installing. And we can run npm run server. And obviously, if you don't know, you can install Vue CLI pretty simply. Npm install, and make sure you have npm installed, and that just make sure you install Node. At least npm install Vue at CLI tag. And what we want to do is follow this guide. And so we're going to use this library called Prismic Vue. And I went ahead and brought up the GitHub for it. And there is a different one if you're using Nux. So keep that in mind. Don't use this one for Nux. There's a Prismic Nux plugin. And so what it suggests, which, by the way, this guide does not suggest, which is wrong, is to actually install the Prismic Vue, Prismic JavaScript, and Prismic DOM. And so those are the three different libraries. So we'll just hit enter there and make sure those three are installed. All right, so those are all installed as dependencies. And now you can see this Prismic gives you these different options. It actually adds it to the prototype. So anywhere inside any of our components, we can use Prismic Endpoint, Link Resolver, HTML Serializer, and we'll talk about what those are in a moment. However, what we need to do is actually create a new repository. So I already signed up, and I clicked the Create Repository button, and it kind of walks you through a few steps here, asks you for your repository name. So we'll call it Erik YouTube 1, and we're on the free plan. And what it'll do is it'll create the repository for us. And now here it is. So this one is the one I've already created, but we won't worry about that one. So we're going to look at this one that we just created. So let's do this first. We'll create the custom types. And we'll do we can single type. That's like if you want to put it for a home page or privacy policy page. But if you're using something like a blog, you want to use this repeatable type. So, we're going to go ahead and create a single type, and we'll call it home page. And now it gives us this option where we can drag and drop things into our editor. This is our main page. So, we probably want to start off with, I don't know, a UUID at the top. I'll just call it UUID. That's the field name. And then we'll have a title, and we'll call it welcome. And it tells us that you can be any of these different sizes. We'll have a rich text edit, so maybe we want to put in rich text. And I'm not going to worry about placeholders or anything, but it kind of tells you the different tags that supports. And then if I wanted to, I can even create different zones. So if you do look at here, slice zones, if you have, you can structure dynamic documents if you wanted to. Like let's say you wanted this structure, you wanted different types of structures, you can turn this on and off. For this simple tutorial, we're not going to do that. We are going to add an image. We'll call it image. And we'll just leave the width and height off. All right, so I think that's pretty good. So maybe this is a home page that we're designing, and this is the structure that we want. You can also go into the JSON editor. I'm not going to mess with this, but if you knew what to do, you could certainly change the JSON. And we can even add types, stamps, colors, numbers, key text, select dropdowns, embeds. We can maybe embed a video or something. I'm just going to go ahead and save it as the singleton type. We're going to go back, and we're going to go to the content, and now it says we can still do our custom content types. So we're going to, or we can still do different types of types, but what we want to do now is just, since we created this one, we should be able, this homepage, we should be able to create something. So we're going to hit this little plus button here. Here is our homepage. So I can put I can just click on the different values. So that's my UUID. I'm going to put hello world. And now I can do some rich text stuff. I don't know, I'm going to put bold. Does this work? And I don't know, I'm going to put a list of first, second, third. And, maybe I put a link in here of something. If I had a link that I wanted to do, I don't know, CNN.com. I'm going to highlight it. Hyperlink. What kind you want it linked to the web? CNN.com. All right. And then I want to add an image, and there's already this default image that we can just use and put it in there. You can change the size if we wanted to. We can even add alt text. So obviously this is not very pretty, but it kind of demonstrates, some things you can do. So I'm saving it here. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. Publish it now. All right, so it's live. So now we have our Hello World homepage. So now we want to be able to see if we can access this in our Vue app. So if we go back to the documentation, it tells us that we need to edit the index.html file and add this script tag. So we're going to click the copy. We're going to do exactly that. So index.html. So here's our app that we just created. And of course we have this index.html, and I don't know, just right under the link we'll put in the script tag. Now of course we need to put in the repo name. If we go back to our Prismic, we called it Erik YouTube 1, so I'll just copy and paste that. Erik YouTube 1. Okay, so Erik YouTube 1.prismic, so that should be right there. And then we have to do a couple other little setup things. We got to create a link resolver, and this just tells it how to handle links. So you may have content links that need to point to Prismic documents. To make your links work properly within your website, you need to set up a link resolver function that returns the appropriate URL. This actually is much more important when you're dealing with dynamic content, because maybe, like for example, here it says doc UID. If you wanted to have dynamic content, you need to set this up correctly. Either way, we need to set it up, but it comes in more play if you're doing that. So I'm going to go to source, I'm going to create a new folder called Prismic. And then I'm going to create a new file called linkresolver.js. And I'm going to copy and paste it. And actually it says doc type equals home, but we called it, go back to here, we call it home page. So this should be home page, although it will just default to / if it couldn't find it. But might as well do that, right? All right, so we created the link-resolver.js. And then we have to actually set up the Vue plugin. So once again, we're going to cheat. We're going to copy it here. And we're going to go to the main file. And we don't need this. And we'll simply move these up. If I can do this correctly. Move it up there. Looks good. And what this is saying, we're going to use prismic.view. This is going to add those special stuff to the prototype that we can use later on. It actually also adds some, it will also add some Vue.js Prismic components that we can use too. And by the way, here's the link resolver, and that is not the right location. It should be in, I think we need to do .prismic / link resolver, and it'll be more like this. Think that would work? Let's see. And now we just need to start it, make sure we didn't break anything. Oops, let me try this again. Let's do .prismic. Okay, so it started without errors. Go to localhost 8080. Okay, here's our website. Great. And we'll just do a little cleanup. We're using the hello world, and we don't need this window. We'll just minimize it. And I'll just delete everything here. Maybe we'll keep the message. Doesn't really matter. Let's delete it too much there. Let's delete it to the end of the div. And we could do a little bit more cleanup if we wanted to. We look at the home. I don't want that logo there. Okay, we just have the routing at the top and the welcome to your app. That's fine. Obviously, if we were doing this for real, we want to create our own components, our own views, but for the simple demo, we won't. Now, if we go back to the documentation again, we created the link resolver. If you have it on private, you have to put this access token, but we left it by default as public, so we don't need that. And now we should be able to do some queries. So since we're using the Vue.js plugin, the library for Prismic, the Prismic library for Vue, that is, we don't have to use the GraphQL queries. You can use them, but we're not going to since we're using Vue. And the way you want to query it is you can use this .prismic.client query, as you can see here. There is a shorthand for that if we wanted, if we just are grabbing one page. And that is, if we look back at the documentation again, it recommends using just client.getSingle. So if you do getSingle here, single types, you can see here the getSingle is a helper function. You can do it without the helper function, which you would do this prismic.client.query, and then you would pass in the Prismic predicates at. Then you would type in the document type, and the navigation would be the home page. That's what we named it. And then it's thenable. It's a promise that returns, and then you take it and do stuff with it. And you would do it to the .results. Once again, we're not going to do that, but you could see the power of Prismic. You can do tons of different types of queries. You can do it by type. If we had multiple posts, we can sort it by certain things so it comes back in certain ways. We can do it by ID or UID and by type, some data. And if you guys really like that, I can definitely do another video where we look at all the different querying capabilities using the Vue Prismic library. Or we can even try to get GraphQL working, but we're not going to use that right now. So the kind of recommended way is to do it this way. So we're going to do a few things. So I'm going to create a created, which is a lifecycle hook. And I'm going to do a mount. Well, we'll do methods. And this method here, hopefully you can see this, is going to have a get content. It doesn't have to be called get content, but it makes the most sense. And we're going to just run get content as soon as the app loads through the created hook. Of course, we need to do this. And now you can access this .prismic client single if we did everything right. So one thing I like to do first is like, did I even do this right? That's the first thing. So we know this is thenable. We can do this asynchronously if we wanted to. And const data await it. And then we're just going to log data to see if it worked. So let's see if it did work. So here's our app. We haven't actually changed anything, but if we look in the console, refresh it, it says undefined, so it definitely didn't get the data. So we actually call it home, but we know it's actually called, if you look back here, we called it homepage. That's the type. And since we're doing the, oops, let me go back. Hello world, more to the top. Since we know we're looking at this client get single, we're looking at the homepage. Cool, so now it looks like we are getting back some information, a bunch of information. ID, UUID, type, href, but we really care about is the data. So let's do this. We're going to create a data object. And we're going to return. And we can return something called fields. And let's take a look at the fields we created in our hello world here. So we called one called welcome. So probably want one called welcome. We have one called rich text, all lowercase. And then we have an image that I think we just called image. And then one called, that's it. So we have a link. So actually, if we go back to the content types, this might be easier. Yeah, so we have one called UUID, welcome, rich text. One's called image. Okay, so those are the four. We have UUID, won't worry about that. And now what we could do this dot fields dot welcome equals data dot welcome. So let's console log that out. This dot fields dot welcome. Look back over here, and we had undefined here. So, oops, actually we need to do fields dot welcome should be data dot welcome. And if we console log this dot fields dot welcome, we look at it, we refresh. Cool. So we see an observer here. It's an array. It has values called heading 1. Cool. So it looks like it's working. So let's do that for all three of these here. So we're going to do this dot fields dot rich text equals data dot rich text. And we'll do the final one, which is image. And we'll do image here. So all three of them will be in here. So now we should be able to display these, and that's where there's some helper functions that'll be helpful. So we actually have these. If we look here at the documentation, there's the prismic.richText, Prismic link, Prismic image, and Prismic embed. So let's try Prismic. Let's just try showing the image at the top first, or let's show the text at first at the top. So if we do h2, we can do fields dot. Let's see here. The first one was welcome. Welcome. Well, in fact, we know that if we go here, we have a title that's called welcome, so that's good. Okay, cool. So we got it loaded here. It shows great. So let's say if we wanted to actually use one of these helper functions, these components, we can use something like Prismic rich text and use it that way. Let's do that first with the Prismic rich text. So we can grab Prismic rich text here. I'll call it h3. Well, we'll just copy and paste it in here. And for field, we're gonna call it field dot. Let's do the rich text one. Rich text. And I don't care about HTML serializer. That's a prop we don't need. But you could use that if you needed to. And if we save it, ooh, it didn't work. It gave us an error that property method field is not defined in this instance. Oh, well, we know field isn't. Let's try fields. Oh, but we still get an error here. Let's clear this out. Okay, it showed up, our rich text, but it has this big error. And the thing what's happening is that this field is taking a little bit longer to appear because it's asynchronous. So the easiest way to get past that is to do a VF and make sure that it's actually there before displaying it. So if you ever see this read property reduce of null, make sure that you check to see exists first, and then that'll get rid of all the errors in your console. All right, so we've been able to connect to the API. Obviously, this welcome doesn't look great. We could do something like this. We can surround this by Prismic rich text as well. Let's see here. Let's see if we go fields.welcome, and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, now we have our hello world. Does this work? All right, and let's do the image. So we know there is also a way to do images, and that's through this Prismic image. And we'll just do the same thing, but we'll do fields. We called it image, and we'll just do a VF, make sure it loads first. You can probably surround this whole thing by a VF if you wanted to. I don't know, we'll do VF fields. And that way we don't have to do it on every one of these. We can delete all this. Let's see here. That one. Okay. And we'll look at it. We'll refresh it. Oh, it still gave us an, oh, probably just because this prop fails for fields. We can do, I don't know, let's do fields.welcome. We'll refresh it. Okay, cool. So everything's good now. And here's our image. It's displaying, it's huge, but it's all working correctly now. So we've grabbed all this information from our Prismic, our homepage that we created in here, and it updated. And of course, if we wanted to change it, let's say we go back in here, we change this to Hello World Erik. I'll save, publish now. I'll go back to our YouTube, our Vue.js app. I'll refresh it. Now it says Hello World Erik. Cool. So yeah, it looks like it's all connected and working correctly. Obviously, this is a really simple example, so let me real quickly show you the more advanced example, and that is through this Prismic. This is this Prismic blog. So I'll take let's take a second. And I'll show you that. I'm actually just going to go ahead and open the folder for it in my downloads folder. Here it is. So the way this works is really similar. That we use the same link resolver, but every view, of course, is different pages in the app. And if you look at the blog home, it does the same thing. It uses this get content, grabs the single blog home, it gets the document ID and everything here, and that's to display this up here. And it also has this router push. If it doesn't find anything, it goes to not found. And inside here, it has all the different, the avatar, the rich text. Is actually, you can do $Prismic rich text as plain is a function for Prismic that you can use it instead of how I did it with the rich text. Like you can use this same thing if you didn't want to use the rich text of Vue.js component, the Prismic component. And so they just put the headline and the description in this. And then they use this blog posts. So if we look at the blog post component, this is doing a v4, so post and posts, and it's doing the same thing. It's doing the query, but instead of doing the query with the helper function, it's actually using the predicates at, which is grabbing all the posts. It's actually, you can use this ordering to do this ordering on it, and it's setting the posts as a result, and then it's doing a v4 for each one of them. And what's cool about it is since we're using a link resolver, which is it's kind of built in here. I think it is actually. Yeah, it's right here. we have this link resulter in the data, which is this .prismic link resolver. It sets up the link so it automatically grabs it from the post, so you can click on each one of them. And then it also has like this get first paragraph, where it just kind of takes a snippet of the first paragraphs and shows it on the home page. Like this isn't the whole one. And then each individual post is grabbed and put in to a router link. Once you route to it, it goes to, if you look at the router file, you can see there is a dynamic UUID under blog, and it goes to each post. And this is where the link resolver came in, I talked about before. And by the way, I'm going through this very quickly, so make sure you stop and restart it if you are confused. Because we have the doc type equals post here, it grabs the doc UUID, and so it'll attach it to the back of blog, and that matches what we have inside the router. So now that would open up the post here, and it's going to grab the get content. It's going to pass in the params UUID, and then when it does the get content, it's going to get the get by UID, but it'll have the UID from the query parameter that's passed into the route. And that way it can grab the document ID, the title, and actually the body. And then it does this thing with slices, which I won't get into, but it slices the data per block into using the slices blocks component. Essentially, it makes it so each slice is like a different part of the page. And they used it using, as we saw before, right here, when you create the content types, you can create different slice zones. All right, so that's a real quick overview of Prismic. If you guys like this, I'll jump into it and look into it even more. I think it's pretty cool. It's really cheap to get started with. I think when you start creating dynamic apps and you have non-developers using it, I think in the past everybody thought, okay, just make a WordPress front end and then you're all set. But I think WordPress is so bloated and slow. People are thinking, well, why don't we have a really cool, we can make a really neat brochure type app, has 4 pages, and then have all the content being pulled from something like Prismic. And it's really simple for non-developers to make changes all the time, and it'll be just dynamically created and updated in the front end. I mean, the front end developers don't have to do pushes and commits every time advertising or marketing or the product owners need to make a change. So let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment below. Thanks.